Hi, this is Harriet Grayson, your host and producer, Community Culture Showcase. And do I have a great show for you with wonderful stories? These are people, animals, and an incredible author who I've known for years and years who writes wonderful books. And we actually spend 4 days together at an equine festival. And you think to yourself, now, Harriet, what kind of books do you write that would be of any interest to people who have horses? Now, Judy, my guest, she writes about horses. Well, she said to me, Harriet, you don't understand the audience. And guess what? We went and I had a fabulous time. Last year I had a great time. This year I had a great time. And really, I know nothing about horses, but they're big and they're sweet. And I want to introduce Judy Ricketts-White. We have been companions. We have been friends for years and years. So welcome, Judy. And you have great news for us?
Yes, I just published my third book in the Slater Mountain book series, which is an award-winning series. And it's geared for about middle grade readers, around 4th and 5th grade. But I usually say for ages 8, 9, and up. So preteens and teens, but they're kind of like Disney stories. They're fun for the whole family.
And in fact, anyone can read them.
Yes.
And
yes.
because they're not like my novels, 300 pages, it's a lot easier to get through them, and you meet young, intriguing characters. So it's a misnomer to say it's just for young adults. It is, in fact, for the whole family.
Yes, it's good family entertainment.
So you tell us about how you got started even writing in the first place.
Well, it's kind of a funny story because growing up, my mom was a journalist, a reporter, and an English teacher, and she wrote poetry her whole life. So I grew up, kids kind of have strange ideas sometimes, thinking, well, there can't be two writers in a family, so I was drawn to art. Focused on art, ended up getting my bachelor's degree in fine art, and worked most of my career in graphic design, illustration, and now web design. But I always wanted to do a children's illustrated book for young children. So I did one illustration, and I thought, well, I should start writing something. I had the ideas in my head. So I sat down and started writing, and 130 some pages later, I realized it wasn't going to be an illustrated book for young children. It was going to be a chapter book for a little bit older readers. And that was the first in the Slater Mountain series, Slater Mountain, The Journey. So that's how I got started with the writing. And then it just kind of took off from there. And once I got started, I really didn't want to stop.
What's the significance of the idea of Slater Mountain?
Not real. There's no significance of it except that I wanted to use a fictional place out west, somewhere near where there were wild horses, and I don't even think there is a Slater Mountain anywhere. But I grew up, believe it or not, on sort of a mountain. Compared probably just a hill, but in New Jersey, called the Watchung Mountains.
Oh.
So I guess maybe that was kind of
stuck in your mind?
Stuck in my mind,
yes,
something
yes.
about being on a mountain. So anyway, but that's how it, I just picked the name Slater. It just sounded like a name from out west or something. So.
And the idea of journey is because you're a heroine. Describe a little bit about your heroine.
Well, the heroine of the book is Bailey Matthews. She's a 15-year-old girl. And she is smart and kind and loving. She loves horses. She's athletic and skilled. And she's a natural with horses. And she studies the wild horse herd that comes through Slater Mountain near the family ranch. So that's my main character. But I tell people that even though the main character in these books is a teenage girl, that doesn't mean the books are just for girls. Just
right.
like Harry Potter is not just for boys. These books are for boys too. There are boys and girls, men and women in the stories. So they're really for everyone.
So you finished the first book, and you said to yourself, I should write a sequel, or what happened?
Well, I kind of, I don't know exactly how it happened, but in the first book, Bailey, the main character, has to step up and make a journey on horseback to save a family member who gets injured. And then at the end of the first book, she and her friend Noah, that she meets in book 1, are riding together. So then in the second book, it just starts out in a way that they go on a trail ride together, and then the story takes off from there. So I had kind of where the first book ended, the second book starts. Yeah, again.
And then lightning hit, and you decided to write book number 3.
Yes. Well, in book number 2, there's a Native American legend is sort of woven into the story where Bailey and Noah are on this trail ride, and they, through strange and dangerous circumstances, they end up in a place that time seems to have forgotten. They get trapped, and they have to figure out how to survive and how to find their way out. And so there's Native American legend woven into that, and her friend Noah has Native American heritage in his background. So then in book 3, it takes off because an old Army buddy, friend of her dad's, is now a park ranger at Yellowstone National Park, and he contacts Bailey's dad. He needs help. It's the middle of winter. There's been a huge snowstorm, and the herd of bison some have gotten separated from the main herd, and he needs help because they send all their wranglers and horses home. They're only there during the warmer months. So he has nobody to help him to try to reunite the stranded bison with the main herd. So he calls on his old Army buddy, and when an old Army buddy calls and needs help, you answer the call. So Will, that's Bailey's dad, says, yes, we'll come. They load up the trailer with the horses and all their gear, and it's the middle of winter, and they travel to Yellowstone National Park, and they have to ride through deep snow and biting cold to reunite the stranded part of the herd with the main bison herd. So it's a whole saga taking place in Yellowstone National Park.
Have you been to Yellowstone?
Yes, I was there. It was quite a few years ago, but I ended up actually camping in a thin nylon pup tent in October in the snow.
Oh.
So I know, and it wasn't nearly as cold then as it is in the middle of winter with deep snow. So I have some idea of what it's like in Yellowstone in the snow.
What made you pick Yellowstone versus any number of other great national parks?
I think mostly because it's just such an icon, and so many people are familiar with Yellowstone and have been there. And because I had been there, I knew something about the park. And I actually have a friend whose brother is a park ranger at Yellowstone. So I was able to get a little information, which is, I do a lot of research with my books, because even though they're fiction, I like them to have basis in fact. And so I wanted to get some information about Yellowstone so that everything is accurate, fairly accurate, although there's, of course, a lot of fictionalization of what's happening and what's going on.
Well, you are a fiction writer, of course.
Yes, exactly.
Tell us about the horses, because you own horses, and how did that develop into owning them and then writing about them?
Well, I've owned horses now for over 20 years. And I've been studying horses with many different clinicians, and I belong to a horse study group, and we study everything from feed and nutrition to horse care to groundwork to riding, equipment, everything concerning horses. So what I tried to do was take good, solid horse handling principles. I had all this knowledge, and I wanted to put it more into a story form, because I feel like when things are in story form, you remember them so much easier than if you're trying to study just sort of like facts, learning facts.
Yeah, like preparing for a test.
And for young readers, you know, 4th and 5th, 6th graders, I think having things in story form just makes it more fun. And the books are supposed to be fun. They're not meant to be a how-to at all. But there's good, solid horse handling principles woven into the stories.
So how did you become a horse owner?
Well, I grew up always wanting a horse, and it was something that I never really lived in the right place, didn't have the opportunity, the finances, whatever, to have horses. So when I reached a certain age, there are a lot of things in life that people say, oh, this is something I always wanted to do, and if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. Well, that was what happened with me and horses. And I decided, well, if I'm ever going to do it, it's going to be now. So I did. I took some lessons and got a horse, and then I knew I needed to learn more, so that's when I started studying some of the major clinicians, horse training clinicians, and joined the horse study group.
And you are currently the owner of 2 horses. Well, actually, one is a mini. You call him a mini.
Right. He's a mini pony cross. He's about the size of a Shetland pony, and his name is Smoochie. When I got him, his name was Spirit, but he gives really good kisses, so I had to rename him Smoochie, and it has served him well. The name has served him well. And then I had an Appaloosa riding horse that I had for 20 years, and his name was Classy, and I lost him about a year and a half ago. He was older, he was 26, and developed some major health problems, and he would have died anyway, so I had to have him put down. It was very difficult, one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do.
Sure.
And so then I wasn't sure what I was going to do, whether I was going to get another horse or not, but then I happened to find a gaited horse that I really liked, and I got him, and his name is Shade. So gaited horses, all horses have gaits, walk, trot, canter, but then there are some horses known as gaited horses that actually have extra gaits besides the walk, trot, and canter. And there's different names for some of the gaits depending on which breed of gaited horse. But with this horse, it's just called gaiting, actually. And others, like Icelandic horses, they have names for them like tolts. I guess the Vikings have names for different names for the gaits, and tolt is one of the gaits. And
oh, gosh.
so there are interesting, they're more like a running walk, almost like a running walk, some of these gaits. But they're very smooth to ride because it's a running gait rather than a trot. So I decided to give gaited horses a try. Some of my horse friends have gaited horses, and they really like them, so I thought it was a good fit.
Do you go and call up a breeder? I mean, how does one actually buy a horse?
Well, there's lots of different ways. You can go online. There are some different sites that you can go on that have horses for sale. There are auctions, which I don't totally recommend, and then there are horse dealers. There are some in Connecticut that, specialize in selling horses. They bring horses in and sell them. They're not really a breeder. And then, yes, there are horse breeders that breed. A lot of times they're specific breeds. But I actually found this horse on a Facebook group that, where people could post if they had a horse for sale. And so I happened to see him on that, and then went and visited him. He was actually in Rhode Island. I went a couple times to see him and ride him, and decided to go ahead and buy him.
Wow,
So,
okay.
yeah, and then a lot of times you have what's called a pre-purchase exam. You call your vet or a vet if you don't have one already, and you arrange to have a pre-purchase exam just to check the horse's health.
Sure.
Make to see if there are any issues, that type of thing. It's always a good idea to do that with any horse that you might consider buying.
Probably true for any animal that you would consider buying. Yeah.
And then of course there are horse rescues that a lot of times are looking to rehome rescued horses, and they do, generally charge a fee, because a lot of times when they get a horse in, they do some training, and then of course they have the maintenance and keep of a horse, so they want to keep their organization going, so they usually charge if you want to buy a horse from a horse rescue. So there are all different ways to purchase horses. I have friends who've actually bought them online, sight unseen, had someone send them a video or whatever. I haven't done that, but some people have. And then I met someone who recently went to Sweden to buy a horse from Sweden and have it shipped over. So, there's all different ways to buy horses, that's for sure. But it's always a good idea if you're not knowledgeable, to take someone with you when you go to look at a horse that you might be considering buying.
Because they live so much longer than any dog you're likely to have, you really have to have a commitment. Dogs are, I've never owned a horse, so I've had dogs and cats, right? Dogs and cats don't live all that long, but they take up a lot of time and money and everything. And a horse lives, 25, 30, 35 years?
Well, the majority of horses, I would say, live into their upper 20s.
Okay.
And some will live into their 30s, and a very few will live to be 40 or early 40s. But that's unusual. But I would say upper 20s is the most likely age, that most horses live to.
And that's a long time.
It is.
That's a big commitment.
It's a big commitment.
Like the only thing I can think of in my own personal knowledge would be like the parrot my grandmother had. They live about 50 years, and they're attached to you. But a horse, so that's, if you get a horse at 40, you're going to be old and somewhat decrepit, and you still have the horse. Who needs to be taken care of?
Well, a lot of people make arrangements, for their horse and everything if they were to pass. But it is something to consider that it is a commitment, just like any animals.
Right.
That you would have, whether they're pets or livestock. It's still a commitment of care, time, money, and veterinary care. So and feed, of course, is a big part of that commitment as well. Space, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it isn't like you're going to take the horse and put him in the garage like you might a cat. I mean, so is there some kind of rule of thumb about so many acres or this for a horse?
In Connecticut, anyway, I don't know about every state, but in Connecticut, each town has whatever their ordinance is as far as livestock goes. How many acres per animal. Whether it's horses or whatever type of livestock you might want to have. So you have to consult with the town to see how many acres you need for each horse. And like I said, it varies with each town. So
when I lived in Colorado, which is several moons ago, I never had a horse, but my neighbors did have horses, and I think it was something like a half an acre per horse. And you could have other livestock, cows. I don't think any of my neighbors had cows, but they did have goats and chickens. That's popular. So I know from visiting with you all the time, all you need is another goat, because you've already got the chickens and you got the horses and you had the dog and you have the cats. I mean, that's all you need to finish it up, right?
I'm perfectly happy with the animals that I have at the moment. I'm not looking to gain any more, but that's okay. A lot of people do. Some of my horse friends and have multiple animals, sheep or whatever different types of livestock. So, but I'm perfectly happy with what I have at the moment.
Now,
So
horses, you've told me this, you've educated me a little bit, are social animals. So
they're herd animals, and so you really should not have one horse, or they should not be on a property without having another horse, at least one other horse, because they are herd animals, and they get their feelings of safety from being in a herd. So they need at least one other horse or an equine of some type. You could have a donkey or a mule or something would be okay. Doesn't have to be a horse, but the donkeys or mules are equines as well.
Okay.
So, but they need another herd mate. They need a herd mate.
What other animals are like herds? Cattle or sheep?
Cattle, sheep are all herd animals.
So you don't buy one, you get at least two, or
You need at least several. In pretty much any herd animal. Unlike you could have say if you had a cow and a goat, that would probably be fine, or a cow and a sheep. Because they're both herd animals, and they would probably be okay together and feel that was their herd. But it's good to have one of the same breed, the same type of animal, more than one. It's good to have more than one.
And this idea of a herd animal, it's not only horses, of course, but does it matter? I mean, you have a little mini, and then you got a bigger one. Does that make any difference?
I don't think it makes a huge difference.
Okay.
As long as it's another of the same basic species, they're going to be way better off and feel more comfortable, safer, happier if there's another animal of that species. And I don't think size makes a huge difference. No.
And I'm an onlooker, right? I don't own them. I'm not around them all the time. But mostly when I see horses, they're always standing up on four legs. But they don't always have to stand up.
No, horses actually have a locking mechanism in their front knees, I believe it is, that allows them to sleep standing up. But they don't get the deep REM sleep when they sleep standing up. They do need to lie down, at least for, around 15, 20 minutes a day, if not longer, to get that deep REM sleep, which they can only, get when they're lying down.
And do they sleep like all spread out with their legs like this, or do they sleep like just with their knees bent?
Both.
Both.
They do. Yeah, they'll sleep in different positions.
Oh. So where you keep them, you need a lot of room for them to spread out their legs and everything.
Yeah, they can. Horses can sleep in a stall, but they can also sleep out on the ground or wherever, as long as they will sleep wherever they can if they need to.
Right,
so,
exactly.
Yeah.
And now, of course, your animals are not in big pastures, so you can't let them just eat grass. I mean, you have to feed them.
Yeah, I have a little, very tiny pasture area, but it's not enough for them to live on year-round. So I have to buy hay for them to have that. They need forage, and that's the hay component. And then I feed supplements to supplement. Because unless you have your hay tested, you don't know what they might be missing. It's just like people taking a multivitamin. You want to give them some supplements to help them have all the vitamins and minerals that they need to stay healthy.
That's why owning a horse is expensive. All this stuff costs more.
Sure.
More money, and of course, when you go to the vet, you might have to put him in the trailer and take him, right?
Well, normally you have vet calls. The vets come out. It's called a farm call, and they will actually come to your farm. Or if you board your horse at a facility, then the vet will come to the boarding facility. But I have put my horse in a trailer, in the past, and taken it to a vet's, at different times when necessary. Or if that was like the only time slot that the vet could, see my animal. I have loaded them in the trailer and taken them to the vet.
Is it like, so you and I both own dogs and cats, and then it's recommended we bring, even if they're healthy, we bring them to the vet once a year, and they get shots in the state. Connecticut, Rhode Island, they have laws about having vaccinated dogs and cats for rabies. Do you have anything like that with a horse?
Well, it's recommended that you get, the basic, like, rabies shot. And there are other shots for horses that you can get. Sometimes it depends on whether you're at a boarding facility or you have your horses at your residence, or if you're transporting, like going interstate, you would need more shots if you're your horse would need more inoculations if you're in a boarding facility where things could get passed around more easily, or if you're taking your horses to shows and they're going to be around other horses, and whereas my horses are at home and they're not being transported a lot, so I'm not required to have as many inoculations for my horses as some others might be. And then if you take your horse to another state, you need to get what's called a health certificate, which you have to have the vet, provide to show that they have had their inoculations or whatever, so that you can transport them to another state. But other than that, you have some flexibility as a horse owner to choose what inoculations you get and how often you get them. Some vets recommend them maybe every year, but you may not necessarily need to get them every year. Like I said, if your horses aren't traveling, competing, and being around other horses very
When you
often.
show a horse, that means a lot of different things, right? I mean, it's
there's
I
all
see the
different.
Olympics, and that's only one part of the showing, right? I mean, there's lots of ways you show
there are
horses.
many different disciplines for horses, which is basically an activity that you would do with your horse. And there's the sort of two major divisions are, Western riding and what's called English riding is the difference of tack and some of the activities that you do with the horse. And, like you said, the Olympics, there's all different types of activities, disciplines that you can do with a horse. There's hunter jumper, there's eventing, there's cross country, there's trail riding, there's dressage.
Yes.
And then in Western riding, there's trail riding, there's reining, there's cow work, there's ranch work, there's all kinds of things that people do with horses. And so depending on what you're doing with your horse, your tack might vary.
Tack is what?
Is the equipment, the saddles and bridles and bits and different things that you would use with your horse. So there's a lot of different things that people do with horses. But the majority of people nowadays use their horse for recreation, whereas not too many years ago, horses had jobs. They were pulling carts and wagons and carriages and plows and all kinds of usages over the years. They were used during wartime to transport men and equipment and ammunition and all kinds of things. Not to mention they've been used in battle and riding, but used in battle. So horses were used for work, jobs. They had serious jobs, for most of history. And then more recently, they've become used for recreation with the advent of the automobile and
tractors.
All of the gas-powered vehicles, gasoline-powered vehicles.
So as a novice who knows nothing, I see that there is a different horse where the people using the English saddle, which does not have the horn, versus the Western saddle. Do you actually get different breeds of horses for those jobs?
Well, horses, just like dogs, because we know dogs are used for different jobs, just like that, there are different breeds of horses that were bred for specific purposes, and their physical abilities are different because of the way they've been bred. In other words, there are hunter jumpers, are breeds that tend to have long legs, so they can jump higher. that type of thing. The quarter horse was bred more to do ranch work, reining and cutting, and so on. So there's, different horse breeds have been bred especially to be good at certain jobs.
Similar to dogs.
Right, similar to
of course,
dogs.
on
Like
a
there's
smaller scale, right?
herding dogs and hunting dogs and
seeing eye dogs
right,
and service dogs.
right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
So horses have been bred specifically for certain jobs. And they excel at and like thoroughbreds for race horses.
Right.
Because they run really fast. So, like I said, they're, specific breeds that are particularly fit and good for certain jobs. Yeah.
So you and I just recently came back from 4 days of being together with this equine affair, which is, tell the audience just a little bit, because it's a fascinating place.
It is, yeah. The Equine Affair is held every November in West Springfield, Mass. At the Eastern States Exhibition Fairgrounds. And it's an equine extravaganza. Everything for every horse owner or anyone who loves horses or interested in horses, everything from human apparel to horse apparel to tack to, jewelry, books, paintings, and then, of course, equipment like horse trailers and all kinds of things. Feed, veterinary services, again, trainer clinicians who offer training programs, and then all kinds of specialties, for everything dealing with equines. And then driving horses is a whole nother discipline. And driving horses is where they're hooked up to a cart, carriage, wagon, whatever, and the horses are driven rather than ridden. So there's all kinds of vendors and educators and all types of activities at this equine affair. It's really quite an extravaganza. And then there are breed demonstrations that show the different breeds and show their different qualities and everything. So it's really, there's a lot to see and do in the 4 days, and no matter how much you do, you're never going to see it all, because it's just too much to see in 4 days.
And I, who am an author of books that have nothing to do with horses, have great success there. And of course, you have horse books, so it's not a surprise that you would have all the success.
Yeah,
and
I'm really excited about how well received the third in the Slater Mountain book series was this year. I'm just very excited that people were just, wanting to read that book and wanting to read the whole series.
And people who have seen you last year, who remember you and came to our little booth there because they just were curious, and lo and behold, you have a new book to show them.
Yep, and I have to put a thank you shout out to Taberton Books, Taberton Equine Books. They're out of New York, and Jean McWilliams, the owner of that, for hosting us and other authors there this year. She does a great job, and
fabulous.
She has a fantastic booth in the Better Living Center every year there. And, it's just a lot of fun and a great opportunity for us to get our books out to the public.
Yes, absolutely. And meeting some other authors.
Yeah.
So meeting one of the authors there who had books about famous horses inspired me to start my new book, which is going to be about my dad, who actually worked with horses during World War II. Trying to save people's lives by getting these pack animals to the right people at the right time, with ammunition and guns and all that kind of stuff in the jungles of Burma.
Yeah,
so,
that seems like it would be a very exciting book to read. So I'm looking forward to you continuing work on that. idea.
You are my editor, my designer. So absolutely. My pretty covers are in large part due to you and your imagination.
Well, thank you.
And we've been playing, these games together for a number of years. And so why don't we talk about a little bit about what's coming up for the holiday season?
Yeah, it's great. We have some upcoming book signings at some different events. The first one is at the Greater Norwich Area Chamber of Commerce at the Holiday Inn in Norwich. And it's their Holiday Bazaar, and that's going to be Saturday, November 26th from 9 to 2. And it's a beautiful event because there's going to be crafters and vendors of every kind, authors, probably jewelry and artists and food and lots of local businesses. So come out and support your local businesses and local artisans, crafts, people and creatives like us with our books.
Right.
So it's going to be a really nice event, and that's at the Holiday Inn in Norwich on November 26th.
And I'm looking forward to it because I have a new book out, Accidental Gangster, Dutch Schultz and Me, which is about my grandfather who ran booze for Dutch Schultz during Prohibition. So he's a hoot. And there's we have an actual photograph of Grandpa on the cover, and to my great surprise, always I'm surprised, I sold an awful lot of those books at the Equine Affair.
Yeah, I think people love to read about gangsters.
Yes. And he was not a threatening-looking man, but he did carry a gun. And my grandmother was always afraid, not that the police were going to capture him, but that his fellow gangsters were going to end up killing him. So yes, it's a hoot of a book. So we'll hope you come on out. And the most important thing about this Norwich event is that it supports local business.
Yeah, I think they're calling that Saturday Small Business Saturday or something like that. So it's a great opportunity to come out and support your local businesses.
So it's Thanksgiving, then there's the Crazy Friday shopping, and then it's Saturday Small Business, which is a kind of event around the country.
Yep.
As an opportunity for local businesses, for people to come out and to shop, and of course most chambers around the country are composed largely of small businesses. So that's a wonderful opportunity, and we want you to come out, and there'll be a whole bunch of different kinds of vendors.
I want to show everyone my 3-book set of the Slater Mountain books, and especially the new book, Slater Mountain Yellowstone. I forgot to mention about my mom's poetry book.
Please tell us about that.
Since my mom was kind of my inspiration for writing growing up, I have her poetry book titled Count Me Never Lost. She was a New York Times published poet, and she wrote poetry her whole life, and this is her life through her eyes, the unique look through her own eyes of love, loss, and the indomitable human spirit. So it's a really wonderful.
Don't forget and tell us about the John F. Kennedy story.
Oh, right. In the book, she wrote a ballad called The Ballad of JFK. It's a ballad, a long poem, and she wrote it right after JFK was assassinated, and she sent a copy of it to then Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, and he sent her back a signed thank you note, which I've included in the book.
That is just a gem of a story.
Oh yeah,
and for all those listeners out there who don't remember, John F. Kennedy was one of our presidents, and one of, unfortunately, a few of them that were assassinated by our fellow Americans. So I can remember how it was one of the defining moments for me growing up, is the moment or the time that I was told that John F. Kennedy was shot, and then of course that he passed away. And I actually captured some of that in a book I wrote called Rockaway Riptides, which has as one of the pieces of it the fact that we were learning about John F. Kennedy's assassination, which I think for someone like myself was probably the kind of defining moment in our personal history and what was going on in this country. So what Judy's describing is just an incredible memento of the times.
I think everyone who was alive at that time remembers exactly where they were when they heard that JFK had been assassinated, that he had been shot.
Yes, and then
Everyone remembers that moment where they were. So it's very touching.
and it became, unfortunately, the kind of start for a number of assassinations of very important Americans, including his brother, Robert Kennedy,
F. Kennedy,
who
yep.
then is again in the Kennedy family is assassinated. And then Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. I mean, it just became one after the other. The 60s
During that turbulent time.
were one of the craziest periods of time in our lifetimes. And so, I mean, I wrote about it in Rockaway Riptides because those are the kinds of things that you truly remember. I mean, my family thought that, the world was coming to an end. I mean, it was just all kinds of crazinesses.
Yeah.
So the fact that you have that letter is just a really precious memento of actually that incredible period of time. So that's really interesting.
Yep.
So that is also, we're going to have available when we at Norwich.
Yep. I'll have
at
the
the
4
Norwich
books.
Holiday Inn. Yep, we'll be surrounded by lots of other writers, artisans, jewelers, who knows what. Will be coming there.
And just other local businesses of every type some will be members of the Norwich Chamber and some may not, but all local businesses. So
we share a membership in Southeast Connecticut's Women's Network, which is a women's networking group that's been around for 40-something years.
Yep.
And that network group we actually just came from a luncheon there before we came to the studio.
Yep.
And they are members of that chamber.
Yeah, so we'll be representing that group as well as our own books. Well, while we're there, we'll be representing them. So.
And then to continue, we have this literary salon, which we've been doing for years. COVID kind of crushed it for a while. We're reinventing ourselves with it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that one?
Okay, so we're having a literary salon, and this one we're calling Authors and Art. So we're not only going to have authors, but we're going to have some artists there. So this will be Wednesday, November 30th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Philomena's Restaurant in Waterford. It's on Boston Post Road in Waterford. A great venue, good food, and there's no admission fee to attend. People will just order whatever food and drink they want off the menu. But authors will read excerpts from their books, and artists will showcase their artwork. And the books and art will be available for sale to make some really great holiday gifts, and for an evening of enjoyment. Just go out, have some dinner, a drink, listen to some previews of great books by local authors, and see some great artwork, and maybe pick up a few holiday gifts. So have a fun night out, entertaining, and do some of your holiday shopping at the same time.
Yes, and Philomena's in Waterford has a nice menu.
Yeah.
You can, from just a cocktail to a complete meal, you certainly can help yourself there. The service is wonderful. And of course, we will be entertaining people, and we want everyone to come out because just like the Norwich event, we're looking for people to support local artisans. I mean, we're all kind of struggling outside of the COVID disaster. I mean, so we're all trying to get back into the groove. Writers can kind of disappear during something like COVID, but when you finish disappearing and you've got to finish work, you need an audience to purchase your stuff. And so this is wonderful. And the guy who owns Philomena's, Michael, has been very kind to us in the past, and we're hoping for a big show to everybody to show up. Now, you can contact me if you are an author and you want to be part of the event.
Or an artist.
Or an artist. So I am, Grayson GraysonHarriet@gmail.com. Contact me if you fit in any of those categories and you would like to be part of our group. We are always extremely welcoming. We'd love to see you, and we'd love to see your art.
We need a head count, and this is open to the public. And we need a head count, so if you would like to attend, please contact Harriet and let her know, because we do need to let Mike know at Philomena's about how many people are coming. And we want the public to come. It's a fun evening. Where can you go and just and have something great to eat or drink, and have some entertainment, and meet some local artists and authors.
Right, and then we want you to come with all your friends and family, pick up people off the street if necessary, and bring them along, because this is a great opportunity. And like most of these things, we want very, very much for the public to be involved and to support local artists. I don't think that the public at large has any sense about how much artists really actually suffered, particularly performing artists and visual artists who wanted to show their stuff. The venues were all closed, so it's been a struggle, and we really want to support our local artisans. We have so much talent in this area. The visual artists, performing artists, authors, fiction, nonfiction, poetry, you name it, and we have it in this wonderful community, and we like to kind of show it off. And then we have one other activity that we're going to be engaged in December. It's we don't have a little title on the bottom, but Central Baptist Church, which is a major church in Westerly, Rhode Island. It's right there on Elm Street. Beautiful church. They are having their holiday bazaar. And again, local artists, local artisans, authors are all going to be at Central Baptist. It's the first Saturday in December. It's from 9 to, I believe it's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Again, contact me if you want more information, or just kind of look at the day or the Sun, the Westerly Sun. I think there'll be information about it. Again, it's a fundraiser for the church, but more importantly than simply that, it's an opportunity for local artists, again, to get together. We've had a tough time during COVID. It gives us an opportunity to get together again, to talk, to see what new stuff we've been having. You know, Judy has this new book out there. Some other artists or authors are out there with their new stuff. They need a place to show it. And Central Baptist has been very kind in terms of letting us come and be there. And they have a gigantic parking lot. I mean, if we could get a few hundred people there, it would be absolutely fantastic.
And is that, which day is that? Is that the
That's a Saturday. First Saturday in December. That's when it is morning, like 9, 10 o'clock at night, in the morning till 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And it is to some extent a fundraiser for the church itself, which has a lot of activities in our community. So come and join us at Westerly. It's a lovely town, even in the winter. And as we always say, it doesn't always necessarily be sunny, but it is always windy. So bring your jacket to go from the parking lot inside. So what else do we want to tell our people? That this is a great holiday season, that we wish everybody a great time. And just recap one more time, Judy. Tell us a little bit more about those books of yours.
Okay, well, the Slater Mountain series is a fun fictional adventure series geared for the middle grade readers around 4th, 5th, 6th grade. But it is perfectly readable by most 8 to 9-year-olds and up. And a lot of times adults buy the book, read them, and and then gift them to their grandchildren, nieces, nephews, daughters, sons, whatever. And I think I forgot to mention that in the newest book just out, Slater Mountain Yellowstone, there's sort of a more spiritual element that comes through in the Native American themes, where Bailey, the main character, is actually visited by a spirit wolf, which kind of starts in the legend book, which is number 2. The idea for that starts, but it develops in the 3rd book, And the spirit wolf helps her. She helps the spirit wolf, and the spirit wolf helps her to reunite the stranded bison with the main herd in Yellowstone.
What got you interested in the concept of a spirit wolf?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I actually had a vision some years ago myself, so I've been drawn to sort of more spiritual aspects myself, and so I guess it sort of just has come through in my writing. But in the legend, where this sort of starts with the Native American legend themes, there is they name the canyon Singing Wolf Canyon because the wind in the storm in the second book sounds like a howling wolf almost, the wind. And so that's where the first seeds are planted for this idea of a spirit wolf.
Did you think of that consciously when you wrote the new book?
It just sort of, the whole thing just sort of developed. I don't know, when I write, it's like, it's not me writing, it's like it comes through me somehow. I don't know how that happens. It's pretty amazing, and I love it because it does happen.
It's interesting about wolves because wolves are universally, across the world, have a certain kind of spirituality for them. Now, my grandmother, one of my grandmothers, came from the Carpathian Mountains of Central Europe, so she was in Hungary. The Hungarian was the language. And she speaks, when she was alive, she's now long gone, but she lived to be 99, and she used to speak to me about this whole thing about wolves in the mountains.
Oh,
and that is kind of a universal theme. That, along with the whole idea of the gypsies, and the wolves, and she would talk about how the wolves would howl, and they were not bad. They were good creatures, and you could see that. I think they have yellow eyes or something. And she used to talk about that when she and her grandfather would be on the cart with the horses. They would be riding through the mountains, and she would hear and see in the peripheral the wolves.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think the wolves sort of universally are the spirit of the wilderness somehow.
Oh, yes.
Is held in the image of the wolf and in the wildness of the lives of the wolves. So I just think that's something that's almost universally held and seen all around the world. So
it's interesting that you should pick up on that.
I know, and I didn't do it purposely. It just happened. Yeah.
It's interesting when I often have artists on and writers on. I say, well, how did you get started? What kind of inspired you to get that spark going? Because we can tell people it's not easy. And there's many interferences that come along that could, in fact, end your book writing. But you get back on. It's like the idea of falling off a horse. Then you just get back on it and you keep on going. But it's difficult to write a book. I mean, I don't care if you're writing a cookbook or a children's book or whatever. It is a major
It's a process.
Commitment.
It's a process.
It is a process.
And it's not that it's specifically any more difficult or harder than anything else. It's just that you have to stick with the consistency of doing it and not stop because I can't even imagine how many books were started and never finished, written by authors, where they've started a book and never finished it.
When we do these book affairs, oftentimes people will come up to us and say exactly that. They say, wow, you don't get appreciated unless you meet someone who said, wow, I started to write a book about this or that or whatever, fiction, nonfiction, even poetry. And they said, oh, I got distracted along the way, and I stopped.
Yeah.
And I haven't picked it up. And we always encourage them to go right back to it.
Go back
Keep
and
on
try
going.
it. Yep.
And don't give up. And write 500 words, throw it in the garbage, start all over again, right? That's
Yep.
what we do.
Yep.
Now, I teach creative writing. and I can help you maybe to get at least started and push you and egg you on if you started a book and you want some encouragement to keep on going. So my creative writing class is free. It's at the Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center in Pawcatuck, Connecticut, right on the Rhode Island-Connecticut border. We'd love to see you. It's Wednesdays, 11 a.m. And I have a whole assortment of different people who show up for my classes. And I think in the future I'm going to get a young lady who has all kinds of fabulous ideas, who we met at this equine affair, is going to come down and be one of my creative writing students.
We met so many fantastic people and so many fantastic kids.
Yes.
You know, it's really just, that's part of the fun of doing these things, is just making these new friends and meeting people from all walks of life that maybe have some similar interests, like in horses or whatever. But to hear what they're doing in their lives is just part of the fun.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So remember, Wednesdays, 11 a.m., Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center. I'd love to see you there, and I'll give you homework, which you don't have to do, because I often give homework. I was there this morning. I gave homework, and only one student did their homework, but that's okay. I'm not there with the ruler to knock your knuckles. I want to give you encouragement to go ahead and write, and feel free to do so. It's anything from writing a memoir for your children and grandchildren to actually, writing a story and hoping to finish a book. So I welcome you. Judy, I want to thank you so much for coming.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, Harriet. Well, we always have so much fun together.
We do, we do. We are a duo.
Yes.
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 And we look forward to many more events. So don't forget, folks, there are a couple events coming up this month. And I look forward to seeing you guys in person, and if not, next time on Community Culture Showcase. Thank you very much, and come and join me next time.